All right, so this is the first part of Unit 2 on migration. We're going to be talking about where immigrants are distributed. This is Chapter 3, Key Issue 1. First off, migration is basically mobility, and mobility is generally, it refers to all types of movement. It doesn't matter where you are, where you're moving to. That could be from one country to another. It could be from home to school. But mobility is that general ability to move around. Some countries, like the United States, we take it for granted because we have all sorts of mobility. We're not limited. However, there are many countries, due to political, economic, or environmental reasons, people aren't able to move around as freely as we are in the United States. A permanent move from one location to another constitutes migration, so it's important to keep that in mind. It's a permanent move from one location to another. Remember, there are two types, immigration and immigration. Immigration with an E means to exit, to leave a place. It is the act of actually leaving it, whereas immigration with an I is the act of going to a location or being in a new location. Net migration is the difference between total immigration subtracted from immigration. So you take your number of immigrants who have come to a place, subtract that by the number of people who are going out of the place, and you get a positive or negative number, and that will determine if you have a total net in migration or a total net out migration. The United States has a total in migration because we have so many people coming into the United States on a general basis. Generally speaking, most developed stage 4 countries are going to have a net in migration. Your stage 2 and stage 3 countries, however, will have a total net out migration in most cases. Again, the biggest places for out migration are in Asia, Latin America, and Africa, while in migration is where those developed countries are: North America, Europe, Oceania, specifically Australia and New Zealand. Ravenstein, the geographer from the 1800s, came up with his laws of migration. We're going to only focus on three throughout this chapter, the most important three that are still relevant today. The first of which is migrants generally remain in the same country when they migrate, that most immigrants move within the same country. And those that do move out, especially to long distances, are always looking for economic opportunity. They're not just moving just for the fun of it. They're looking for a better place, a place where they can better their lives. So there are two basic types of migration. There is internal or international migration. It's a movement from one country to another. You can have voluntary or forced. Voluntary is where you choose to go. Forced is when, as it says, you are forced to, you're compelled to move for many reasons. Most voluntary migration is driven by the want to find better economic conditions. Again, that Ravenstein model from his very first law. Most forced migration is due to war, oppression, natural disasters. The second category of migration is internal migration. This is a permanent move within the same country. This is us moving from San Antonio and moving to Dallas, for example. You have interregional, which is movement between regions of a country, so moving from the southwest to the northeast, for example, in the United States, or intra-regional, movement within the same region. Again, moving from San Antonio in the southwest to Phoenix, Arizona, which is also considered to be in the southwest. There are 4 stages of migration, and this is the migration transition model, and yes, another model with 4 stages. The first one, stage 1, is high daily or seasonal mobility in search of food. You don't see that so much anymore. That's really your hunter-gatherer societies. Stage 2, your high international immigration and interregional migration from rural to urban areas. This is as cities or as countries advance and develop further. People are moving out of the countryside into the cities where you have jobs. Stage 3 is high international immigration and interregional migration from cities to suburbs. This is what we're seeing in a lot of developed countries like the United States and in Europe, where people are moving out from the city cores, out to the suburbs, and that's the lifestyle choices we're going to see in a couple of minutes. Then finally, stage 4, people are actually moving back into the cities, as we see in the urbanization of downtown areas like San Antonio and the Pearl District. The U.S. has more foreign-born residents than any other country. We have approximately 43 million currently live here. That's 43 million people who were not born in the United States, but immigrated with an I at some point into the United States during their lifetime. There have been three general eras of U.S. immigration. You had the late 17th and 18th centuries. This is when the British were coming and establishing the original 13 colonies. For the most part, the groups hugged the coastline. Starting in the early 18th and 19th century, you started to see a lot more Europeans moving over, not just British, but actual Europeans. And there were four basic waves that these Europeans came over. The first one were Irish and German during the 1840s and 1850s. The next were the 1870s with the Irish and Germans. So if you were asked a question that said you knew nothing else but that your family came to the United States from Europe between the 1840s and the 1850s, what that you would say is then most likely my family is either Irish or German. Keep that in mind if you listen to this. 1880s, Scandinavians came over. And then 1905 and through 1914, Southern and Eastern Europe, that's where the majority of the people were coming from. A lot of the things affecting the Irish were due to politics as well as famine. Germans, the same thing. During the 1920s, immigration came to a halt due to World War I, the Great Depression, and then again the World War II. Since then, we've seen much more a big transition in how and where immigrants are coming from. Most immigrants coming to America now are from Asia and Latin America. Mexico officially became the most populated, or gave us the most immigrants just a couple of years ago. They beat out Germany, who had over 7.2 million immigrants come during the 1800s. However, due to the number of undocumented Mexican workers in the United States and just undocumented individuals in the United States, that number probably exceeded the Germans back in the 1980s. And that will end this particular lecture on how migrants are distributed.